I'm reading a chapter called To Tell the Truth from my book. It's chapter 16. My mum and dad always taught us to tell the truth. No matter what had happened, we just had to tell the truth and not a lie. Of course, Mum and Dad always told the truth, but my dad sometimes used to exaggerate. But he said that was different. He said that everybody knew when he was telling a tale, and it was just for fun. He used to tell a story over and over again to different people, and every time he told it, the story had changed a bit, and it got better and better. Do you remember when my dad and Uncle Sid went to Scotland to buy those sheep? Well, they had to stay in a hotel. And they hadn't thought about nightwear before, because at home they just used to wear an old shirt or nothing if it was warm enough. And this is the tale my dad told us about that. When we got to this posh hotel, a footman comes out and asks us for our luggage. We hadn't got any, and we hadn't brought anything with us except the clothes we stood up in. "What about your nightwear, sir?" asked the footman. Without another word, we drove off to the nearest town and bought a suitcase and some pyjamas and handed it back at our hotel to the footman. But the next time Dad told this story to Auntie Peggy, he said, "When we got back to this posh hotel, a footman comes out and asks for our luggage and opens our car boot and peers inside. Without another word, we drove off at top speed, with the boot still open and flapping all the way." Next time Dad told the story, I heard him with Auntie Martha, and his footman fell over onto the hotel drive when they hastily drove off with their boot flapping to buy their pyjamas. And this time they didn't buy a suitcase, they just handed it over in a paper bag. And so the story went on. Dad said it wasn't a lie, it was just an exaggeration and just a tale to tell. But one day I told a lie. Something that I regretted for a long time. This is how it happened. The posh and clever girls like Helen, who used to be in our school, and a girl called Virginia, used to go up to Mr. Bantam at playtime, and he smiled at them and chatted to them, and sometimes he even linked arms with them and danced round the playground. Oh, I would love Mr. Bantam to do that with me, because then everybody would look at me and be jealous, and they'd think I'd gone up in the world, and that I was important. How good I would feel skipping round the playground with Mr. Bantam. But no matter how respectful I was, or how hard I worked, he never chatted to me, and he never smiled at me, ever. Then I saw that he noticed you if it was your birthday. I saw Brenda go to him and tell him that it was her 10th birthday. And then he smiled at her and they skipped round the playground together. So I made a plan. One day, when Brenda wasn't there, I went up to Mr. Bantam. "It's my birthday, Mr. Bantam," I said, even though it wasn't. He looked at me carefully, and then he wished me happy birthday. But he didn't smile or chat, and he didn't link up with me and go round the playground. He did do something unusual, though. He put his hand in his pocket and brought out a sixpence and gave it to me. And then he ruffled my hair and with a sigh walked away before I even had chance to say thank you. I looked down at my lovely sixpence. I could not believe it. Mr. Bantam had given me a sixpence. I kept it in my hand all day, and when I got home I put it in my cracker box under my bed. It was only when I got into bed that night I realised what I'd done. I had told a lie. I don't let anyone know what I had done. I was very frightened. I don't even look in my cracker box at my charm bracelet, because I then would see the sixpence hiding there. It began to cast a big shadow on my life. I was so ashamed. So I made another plan. I decided that I would keep working on our farm, and if I kept busy, I might forget what I had done. On Mondays, Dad went to our cattle market in Hull, where we sold our animals. I decided that I would go with him. But we didn't say much in the journey. I guess he was concentrating on how much money he would make from the sale of his animals. When we got to Hull, he parked on the roadside just outside the market and trotted off in a rush to see how our cattle were getting on. And I followed behind him as best I could. Our cattle had gone on before us in a great big lorry and had come into our yard early in the morning. They'd been herded up inside up a wooden ramp which made them slip and slide, and you could see the whites of their eyes because they were frightened. Now they were at the back of Hull Market, and we found them being checked by the ministry. They were all right, of course, but they had even more fear in their eyes now. Dad tapped them gently on their bums with his stick and then set off again. I ran after him. We were looking for Ricky. Ricky was a drover, and he was in charge of putting our cattle into the pen. Drovers were easy to spot because they wore long brown coats, but they were not always easy to catch because they rushed about from pen to pen. "How do you do?" said Dad to Ricky. My dad liked Ricky, and I noticed that he gave him £0.50. When I asked what it was for, my dad just said it was luck money, a sort of wish that Ricky would bring him good luck on the market. After we'd had a word with Ricky, we rushed off to see Auntie at the cafe. She wasn't really our auntie, of course. She wasn't anybody's auntie as far as I knew, but that's what everybody called her. In we went to a damp, smoky room with rough wooden tables. It was already full of farmers, hidden behind great mountains of sausage and mash. It was dinner time. "How d'ye do?" Dad greeted Auntie and took off his trilby to show respect. Auntie stood behind a big counter. We held out our cracked big wet plates, and dollops of sausage and mash were landing on them. Then we went to a table with farmers that all looked like my dad, all dressed the same. We sat round and tucked in. I didn't eat much of mine before I was full, and then I stared out of the window to the road where our van was parked, waiting to take us home again. After we had sold our cattle, of course. Dad finished his dinner at last. Then he threw a sixpenny tip onto the table for Auntie. And with a jolt, I was reminded of that one lurking in my cracker box. I'd only got it because I had lied. I jumped up suddenly with the shock of that memory, and I ran off after Dad to the auction ring.